Hi, this is Darren from SimNation again, real quick to do the second part of the preview, which is the defensive side of the ball. Again, couple quick caveats here. As we talk through these previews, the projections may not line up because this is a preview view of the draft. I will put the actual one up tonight when I do the sim and the upload. But just wanted to give everyone a quick preview, especially in the league, so that they can take a look. If you're interested in joining us, definitely go to the links inside this video, which will point you to SimNation's Slack or forums, and you can join WWPF here. This is a Wolverine Studio Draft Day Sports College Pro Football 2023 title. Kudos to Brooks and Gary Gorski for all the great work they do, though. Really enjoy playing this game. Definitely enjoy commissioning it. But I want to dive straight in because I want to try to keep this video a little bit shorter than the last one. Not because I don't like the defensive side of the ball, but because I sometimes ramble. Um, so uh, this draft, from a defensive end perspective, it's okay. It's not great. Joe Davis is someone who I don't think is a top 10 pick. I'll just say that outright, but I do think he's a solid first rounder or so. He's strong, fast. He's a really good tackler. I think if you need a defensive end, I would definitely target him for the first half of the first round. But just bear in mind that he's not going to have the greatest of locker room impact. He's a dick. His lack of intelligence also may hinder him when he goes up against more smart linemen who may be able to adapt to his strength and his speed. But he is definitely someone I do think should be picked in the first round. Um, Lorenzo Sasso out of Oregon is another fast. He's not as strong, but he is definitely solid across the board. He's a really good tackler too. He's worth first round money, so if you wanted to spend it on him, I think that you definitely wouldn't be going very far off the reservations and doing that. Um, I don't have many concerns around his intangibles. He's a solid pick in the first round, probably maybe more the second half of the first round, but you really can't go wrong by picking him. Another guy to keep some eyes on, and I think the only reason why he's not higher would be where is he? Michael Perry out of Baylor. He's someone who I could see sneaking up into the first round. From a perspective of his intangibles, he's got decent strength. He's not the most agile guy in the world, but he is fast. And he's a pretty good tackler for a defensive end. As you get later in the draft, a couple names that you probably will take a look at. And just going back to Michael Perry for a second, he's actually definitely faster than Joe Davis and Lorenzo Sasso that we've talked about. So it's just his ability to tackle, his agility, those type of things, maybe not on their level. But someone else to keep an eye on, or two other people to keep an eye on, would be see if I can't find him, is Tucker Hunter out of Boise State. I definitely think he's a good late round draft pick find. He's got good speed, good agility. I don't think his strength is quite there, but he's someone who I think that if you were to take him, I don't think you're gonna regret that choice. Um, Probably someone who's dropping a little bit because of his agility is Ahmad Alexander. He had a pretty productive career at Hawaii. Was pretty good in college, but his agility is just horrible. But if you can look past that and look at his speed and you can look at his strength, his endurance, I don't think is as good either. But again, a pretty good late round find if you're looking for that. Um, this isn't one of the better drafts from a defensive tackle perspective. I'll just go ahead and say that now. But it all comes down to kind of like offensive lineman. What are you looking for? If you're looking for strength, there are some guys in here that are insanely strong. John Haley out of Louisiana Lafayette, uh, probably Keith Covey out of Louisiana Monroe, those Louisiana boys, John Patton out of Marshall, Scott Wu out of Arizona State. or some names that immediately come to mind as people who, if you're looking for strength, they're definitely people you should take a good, long, hard look at. But one of the problems sometimes when you get with strengths is that they're really slow, or maybe they're not as good of a tackler. I do think John Haley, though, is a guy who I could see going into the first round. His strength, his tackling, he's got decent speed. He's just overall he's a decent person to get if you want someone to plug that middle and make tackles for you. But really, the only legit first rounder I see potentially in this draft is Taysor Griffin. I, I have a little bit of struggle with him, and let me explain this. He's out of Stanford. He, in my mind, is a defensive end. He's not a defensive tackle. If you were to convert him to defensive end, I think you're getting a very fast, a very strong guy. He's probably like a bull rusher. Uh, but if you're going to keep him at tackle, he definitely will get to the quarterback and he will probably throw centers out of the way in doing it. But again, a lot of his skills tend to lend themselves more to defensive end. I strongly suspect he was a defensive end to begin with in college. Skelter took over Stanford this year. He probably converted him to defensive tackle, and that's probably why you see he's still learning the defensive tackle position. But he's definitely someone that I would say that if you want to get a bull rusher in the middle, he's the guy, and he's worth the pick. There's some of these guys who I don't really feel like that they're worth a pick or as high up. Another guy that just to take a look at if you're looking for someone who is fast uh, would be maybe William Pryor out of SMU. But Taysor Griffin is a solid number one. I think John Haley is someone who could creep up into the number one position. But those are really probably the two big ones. And then, of course, if it's late in the draft, take a look at Scott Wu or William Pryor. Those are two other names that it makes sense to try to draft in maybe the fifth or sixth round. This is a deep draft for linebacker. I'm just going to say that out right now. Um, there are a lot of quality linebackers here. I think Eric Labe, however you say his name, from Central Florida, he's a top 10 pick. He's strong, fast, durable, and he's just a tackling machine. The only thing I would worry about him is he's not really a coverage linebacker. He doesn't have great hands. And if you're looking for a leader in your linebacker core, it's not him. Another guy who I would argue is a top five pick is George Montanez out of Florida. Again, SOA. Uh, Kasor has UCF, by the way, so Eric Labe is a really good choice. But George Montanez, he's dumb, but he has ungodly speed, agility, tackling. He's a good leader. He's got good hands. He's got endurance. He does everything really good, minus he's just not very smart up stills. But I could see him being top five pick. Some would argue potentially he could even be a top one. I don't think so. He's 5'11", 220 pounds. He's undersized. But if you want to pick him in the top 10, I don't think you're going to go wrong, though. Dennis Blue is another top 10 pick. I think he's a solid top 10 pick out of Western Kentucky. He's got the speed, he's got the strength, he's a great tackler. His hands aren't quite where they need to be. He's still learning his position. And you might want to just take him a little bit later in the first to save yourself some money because I think he's also going to be a little bit of a disruption in the locker room. Elmo Washington is an interesting guy for me. He's out of Utah State, by the way. Uh, I think he's got good personality. He's got hands. He's got agility uh, and tackling, but I don't know that it's enough to overshadow his lack of speed, his strength, and he's still learning his position. I think that he should legitimately drop into the second round. Um, and I wouldn't pick him in the first for those reasons, but I think if you get him in the second or third round, you're getting a steal. Stephen Blanchett is the other Western Kentucky linebacker in this draft. He's definitely the lesser of the two. He is, in my mind, a second round pick. He's got good speed, strength, agility, and tackling. But I don't think that they're good enough for the amount of money you would pay for a first round pick. I would say try to get him in the second or third round, but just be aware he may not be there. He doesn't have great endurance uh, and positional awareness, and I think that detracts from him, especially when you compare him against Dennis Blue, who was on the same team. Um, Jim Major out of Colorado State, again, he's kind of a reach in the first round, and I don't know that I would take him in the first round. He's got good speed. He's got a great modal. His positional awareness is really there, but strength and agility and hands, he's not worth the first round money in my viewpoint. I think you're better off trying to get him in a later round, like the second or third, where you're paying a little bit less money for him. And I think if you do that, you're going to get a pretty good linebacker. Um, the only other people I would say that you might want to keep an eye on in the draft is Oscar Edgar is another guy, as well as yeah, I think Oscar Edgar is the only guy I think I would say right off the bat is out of Iowa. He's a good mid-range late draft pick. He's got good speed. From what I saw in college of him, his agility is there. He's kind of weak. His hands, he's not a coverage linebacker, and but his tackling, his agility, and his speed, he would make him a pretty good get to the point of attack and tackle somebody. So if you're looking for that, I think he's a good guy to try to pick up later in the draft. Cornerback is interesting this year, mostly because there's a lot of options, but I think a lot of the options are better second, third round picks than first round picks. Um, I think Alexander Barreto out of Alabama, insane speed. I suspect he has really good hands. His personality is still, but you need to have some patience with him. He's still learning his position. He's not a great tackler, and his endurance is not quite where it needs to be. Plus, he's 5'11". So as he goes up against some of the taller wide receivers in the WWPF, he may struggle a little bit. Um, Eugene Tejada, I think you need to do due diligence around his durability, his endurance, and his smarts. Again, 6'1", he should hold up pretty well, but I don't think you can overlook the speed and agility. I think he's elite, and he has good hands. So he's someone who I could see being a top 10 pick as long as you're fine with the fact that he may not be on the field every single down. Amos Barrett, uh, a trend you're going to see in this draft is a lot of the tall cornerbacks are pretty weak and from a strength perspective. Amos Bennett is one of those. His agility is in college was elite. I think he's a great slot corner. I think he has the speed to go toe to toe with maybe the second or third wide receiver option. Um, his hands and his knowledge of his position probably are some of the best in this draft. But he's not going to make a whole lot of tackles, which is kind of weird for a 6'3", 189-pound cornerback. He plays more like a 5'11". But I could see him going in the first round. Again, you don't find many 6'3" corners that have his agility, also have his hands. So you definitely want to take a look at him. But I would try to get him in the second round, not the first. Dean Gary, he's out of Boston College. Again, he's tall, but strength isn't there. He's fast, but he's not very agile. He'll catch pretty much anything that you throw at him, but he's going to miss most of his tackles. I would say that he's another one of those guys where if you find him in the second round or third round, you should try to draft him. But I wouldn't go much higher than that. Jose Scales, he's out of Baylor. He's a solid first round pick to me. His speed and agility, you just can't look past it. He's not a ball hawk, but candidly, with his speed and agility, he should be able to disrupt quite a few plays. Um, and he's not a great tackler, but again, you're talking about a cornerback, right? You can't overlook his 6'3". He's not one of the weaker ones. He's actually decent in his strength. so he can go up against a bigger wide receiver or a big tight end and actually hold his own against them. And very few people are going to get past him. Dominic Haynes, he's a second round pick. He's not a first round pick, maybe a third round actually. He's not the fastest guy, but he's agile, he's smart, he has really good hands. His tackling could be better, but he knows his position well. And I would say that candidly, if you're really looking for a solid second or third round pick, he in the defensive backfield, he's the guy for you. I wouldn't look past that. Uh, Outside of that, I think there are a bunch of other really decent cornerbacks out there. Ruben Sorensen out of Oklahoma State is a guy that I would take a look at. His agility's not really quite there, um, but he's 6'2". Strength is an issue. Again, like I said, a lot of the taller ones in this class don't seem to have that really kind of strong personality that will allow them to get buffeted around. His agility is not great, but it's solid. He's got solid hands. He's solid smarts. Endurance is probably the reason why I would say don't draft him early. His endurance really is not spectacular. Uh, a guy you want to kind of keep on your radar throughout this draft is David Leslie out of Maryland. Um, the reason for that is his speed is not great. He's probably best off against third wide receivers, but he's got ungodly hands. If you throw things at him, he's going to pick it off, especially if he's in position. He's got good endurance, he's smart, and he's highly agile. So he's someone I could see moving up into the first round, but I would say that being 5'11", I don't know that I would pay first round money for him or second or third round. Um, Free safety, it's a small class. I would tell you that from a free safety perspective, um, I think Charles Browning is a first round pick. I don't think he's in the first half of the first round. He's a bit short, 5'11". He's not that agile, but he's fast enough to cover most wide receivers. And if he gets his arms on you, he's going to bring you down. So I would say that he's worth the second half of the first round money. Nathaniel McDowell, I kind of go back and forth on this guy. Um, I think from a perspective of playing against quality opponents he's got good agility. He can hang with like second or third wide receivers, tight ends easily. He can pick the ball off if it's thrown at him. He's smart. He can make pretty decent tackles and he has endurance. I actually, in some regards, kind of view him as a better first round pick than Charles Browning. Um, it's just his stats in college weren't quite what I would have expected. But again, you also have to bear in mind he played at Baylor in the Big 12, and the Big 12 at different points has been a little bit more run happy than pass happy. So some of his stats may be more indicative of just people weren't challenging him. Another guy to keep on your radar will be Richard Rafferty out of Vanderbilt. Again, this is a guy who my main concern with him is his endurance, but he's got good speed. His hands are off the charts. Again, he's one of those guys, if you throw at him, you need to do so at risk because he's likely going to pick it off. His agility is not great. His strength isn't great. Of course, he's only 5'10", so there's a matchup issue there, right? But he's someone that you should take a look at in the second, third round, maybe even the first round if you really want to get a ball hawk. His speed is pretty good. It's just not elite. Strong safety. This one's hard because a lot of people want different things. Some people want a box strong safety. Some people want a coverage strong safety. Some people just want a all-around good one. Um, I think from my perspective, really the only two strong safeties in this class that really are uh, truly strong safeties. I think that there are people in this class that maybe are something else, right? Would be, um, sorry, I lost my train of thought though. Would be Michael Maggie. He's agile, fast. He has great modal. He's got ideal size. He's 6'3", 224. I mean, that's that's a pretty big, strong safety right there. I see why they're high on him. He doesn't have the great personality. His tackling could be better, but he's someone I could see slipping into the first round. Another guy that I'm pretty high on based on his collegiate career, but I don't think the analysts are high on him, is Leslie Hagel out of Massachusetts. You always got to be careful with the people out of Massachusetts, but he's someone who I think has fairly elite speed. And someone that you might want to take a good long hard look at because he's got good hands, he's agile. His biggest problem is he's not very strong. And again, he's 6'2", 220, but he doesn't tackle like a 220-pound strong safety. Trent Anderson, I don't think you can look past his 6'4", 227-pound frame. Um, to me, Trent Anderson, he's a pretty good guy to go after. He's just not a ball hawk. He's got really good speed. His agility's okay, but he can when he tackles, he wraps up. So I would say that Trent Anderson is another guy that I could see people going after and getting some value. He may slip into the first round. Um, I'm not sure about Nicholas Wolf. I don't think he's the best safety in this class. He's got, well, let me rephrase. I think he's maybe the best overall. He's going to be really someone who guards tight ends and maybe backs out of the backfield. You throw the ball at him at your risk because he's got good hands. He's smart. He's got a decent modal. He's agile. He's just not very strong. And I would say that I also suspect that he's one of those people who hasn't faced a lot of great well, he has at Minnesota, but he doesn't play like he's 6'2", I guess is the easiest way to say it. So, strong safety, you have some pretty decent options. There's some speed in this class. There's some really good tacklers in this class. So, if you want box safeties, you've got a couple. If you want safeties who can cover, you definitely have some of those in this class. I think this class leans more to the latter, will it's a coverage class. And then, not really going to talk about punters. Um, honestly, I don't think that this is a class where there's a good punter. I think Joseph Dominguez is probably the best punter in the class. Um, I wouldn't draft a punter if I were you in this class at all. So that's kind of how this class looks from a defensive side of the ball. So if we go back and just recap real quick, um, from a defensive end perspective, you have a lot of options here. There's speed, there's strength. There are a lot of different people you could get through the first few rounds and actually really have some difference makers. I will say, as much as it hurts me to say it, avoid Thomas Godfrey from Maryland. He had a good collegiate career, but I don't think it's going to translate well into the pros. Defensive tackle, again, this is another space where you've got lots of strength in this class. The speed, maybe not so much. Of course, the main guy here, Taysor Griffin, I really do think is more of a defensive end. But if you keep him if you keep him at defensive tackle, probably good in a 4-3, he definitely will move people out of the way. And I could see him having a very good career. It's just you're gonna have to be patient with him. Um, from a linebacker perspective, this is a very deep class in linebacker. There's lots of thumpers, there's lots of coverage guys, there's speed guys, there's good overall guys. I definitely could see potentially three linebackers going in the top 10. Labbe, Montez, and Blue are all really good options at linebacker. And you definitely want to take a good look at them. Later on the thing, look at Joseph Rafferty. Is one that is another guy to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you get later in the draft. Cornerback, again, there's lots of good options. He'll just bear in mind that a lot of the people who are tall don't play with strength, but again, there were ball hawks in this. There was lots of speed in this draft. And I think you can, over the course of the first 3 rounds, definitely find someone that will be a future starter for you, if not a right away starter. Free safety, again, this is more of a draft that focuses on speed and coverage than more playing in the box. So Charles Browning is someone who you probably want to take a good look at. McDowell, he's okay. Rafferty is someone I'm high on. But I think you can at least find a few good um, quality coverage free safeties in this draft. Strong safety, again, it's leaning towards the coverage more than the box safety. So again, you have a couple of those. Maggie is someone who you want to look at, or McGee, and then Trent Anderson is another guy I would look at. So you've got potential in this class. Nicholas Wolf also, and then at punter, I just wouldn't draft a punter, but if you're going to, Joseph Dominguez is probably your best bet. So that's it for now. That's the draft preview. The file will go up tonight. You will be able to see all this. Scouting is, I think, going to happen on Monday or Tuesday. And then, of course, the draft is next Saturday, the 11th. I don't know the time yet. If you're interested, we will put up what time it is and where it's being broadcast live. And then at the same time, what we will also do is, if you're interested in joining the league, we'd love to have you. We have quite a few teams still open. And just look in the links in this video and let us know on Slack or in the forums. And definitely would love to have you. But thank you for the time and have a good night.